Hello and welcome to today's episode of the WholeHearted Living podcast with your host Deb Thorpe. And today I wanted to record almost like a short and sweet podcast episode, which is what to almost like words of encouragement and what to expect when it just feels like everything is going wrong. Okay, when you're just in those moments where like the shit hits the fan and it's freaking spraying it all across the room and you're like, what even is this? And that's what we're going to dive into today. So let's do this. So one thing that I became very, very aware of when way back when I first started counselling really is that most people who have encountered some form of trauma when they were younger, it's almost like their inner child within them is so dominant in wanting to be saved or rescued, or to believe that there is almost like this magical place where everything is always going to be okay, and there's going to be no pain and no hurt, and that this is somehow attainable. Okay, and this then manifests in lots and lots of different sorts of behaviours as adults. Very often times then that one of the trauma responses will be fawning, so it's like people pleasing on steroids, right? So for most people they won't even realise they're doing it, to be fair. So that can be one of the many, many different responses. And I say that because when we think about a child and they are very vulnerable and they need protecting, and they, one of the sole jobs as parents is to provide them with unconditional love and an environment that teaches them that they're always going to be loved and they're safe. And once they've developed this strong foundation within the child and the environment, the child then can go on and it can cope with change in the environment, or it can cope with struggles and disappointments, because it has this fundamental basis of but I'm loved and I'm safe and I'm okay. But when that isn't there, that inner child within us is always seeking that. And I noticed this a lot when I first started counselling, is the sheer desperation and desire of so many adults to access that. Okay, and they will look to people and places and different things to give them that sense of security or unconditional love or safety, because it's their inner child that is wanting that. And of course, as children, we can only look to the adults around us for that. And there's almost this desire, this drivenness to make everything as okay as possible. Now, as I'm speaking this, I'm sure you can see how this tracks. Okay, that inner child is driving the need for a better life, for safety, for love, for all of these things. So this doesn't necessarily, have to translate into anything bad or anything destructive by any stretch. But it's this concept of trying to always look outside of yourself for it, and to to almost like have this rose-coloured tinted glasses effect of what life should be. And so then I say this because when life then doesn't become all perfect and rosy and happy and butterflies and rainbows all of the time, because that's not life, we understand that. When in those times when it does go to shit or something unexpected happens, it then becomes very easy for that person to spiral down in on themselves, that it must be something they've done. It must be something inherently wrong with them. They're broken, they're damaged, and it feeds this really destructive inner cycle, because it's their inner child that's in the driving seat. And as children, we only have our own experience as a frame of reference. So as a child, if we were to see our parents arguing at the end of the day, that child isn't sitting there listening to that thinking, oh, poor mum and dad, maybe they're really stressed. Maybe they've had, a really tough day at work, and, they're just struggling to deal with it, but it'll be okay. That child is trying to make a meaning from that situation, but they only have themselves as the frame of reference. And by that, it means that child is going to sit there and think, oh, mum and dad are arguing. What are they arguing about? Oh, maybe, I didn't do so well on that test today. And, if only I'd have got an A, then they wouldn't be arguing now. So I must ensure that tomorrow I try harder. Okay, that's one of literally hundreds and hundreds of different stories that we can create, because as human beings, one of our fundamental traits is that we are meaning creating creatures, which means that we will always seek to find the meaning, and we'll create a story for situations, for events. Okay, but as a child, you don't have the experience or the ability to see like outside of yourself. So therefore you relate the meaning back to you. So hopefully you can begin to see now that when the inner child is in the driving seat and they are seeking this rose-tinted world where everything is okay, and because that's what they should have known really as a kid, you shouldn't have to worry about any kind of adult issues as a kid, right? You should grow up in, certainly from a very, very young age, trusting that you're safe, that you're loved, that all is okay, right? So that child is in the driving seat as an adult. They're seeking that in the outside world. They're not going to find it, because that's not the case when we enter into the real world as an adult. And so then when it doesn't all go perfectly, that inner child then is seeking the meaning, but they'll seek it based on themselves. Oh, it's because I'm not good enough. Oh, it's because I said that thing or I did that thing and that caused that. And okay, so that's one important concept I wanted to introduce you to, because it's quite, once we know this, it's quite easy to then spot it within ourselves. I am so connected to my inner child now. I know the second she is in the driving seat. And sometimes it's really fun and playful, and I might be really tired at the end of the day, and little toddler Debbie comes out that can't even string a sentence together, but also doesn't want to go to bed, and all of that stuff. So I can very much play with it now. But there is that recognition that I almost invite you to check in with yourself in, is that when something unexpected happens in life, when it all starts going to shit, when it's not working out the way that you thought, what's your where's your mind going to? Is it becoming very self-deprecating? Is it putting you at the center of something, even if it was something way beyond your control? Like, where's that going? Because that's going to point you in the direction as to what part of you in that moment is in the driving seat. And this is where you being the director of your mind really comes into play, because maybe it's I talk about this actually in the bonus episode 1, where I was out on a walk in the national park, and Bailey, my dog, slipped and fell down a ravine, and I couldn't find him, and it was just one of the most horrific experiences. And I talk about in that moment how strong the inner critic came out, and I knew it was there, and it was like saying all these horrible things to me of different decisions I could have made that would have resulted in a different outcome, and so this was all my fault, and I nearly killed my dog, and all of these things. The director in my mind at that point was able to go, this is not for now. Like, this is an emergency situation. I can't entertain this at the moment. I need to stay focused on, rescuing him and finding him and getting everybody to safety. Okay, so that's what I mean when I talk about the director of your mind. It's not that those parts magically disappear, but you are in control of it. And actually, once everything was okay and we got back home that night, I jumped in the shower and cried my absolute heart out, because all of that stuff needed to come out, and that was all part of the processing. What we want to be able to do is recognize when these different parts of ourselves come up. And so that's like one of my first thoughts now, and this is my invitation to you. When something unexpected happens, when life isn't going the way that you want it to, when it feels like it's all falling apart, check in with yourself and ask which part of you is in charge right now. And, engage with that part, or, give it some love and some healing, but send it away because you need to draw upon another part. Like, take that director's role. Okay. The next stage of that is knowing that we are meaning creating creatures. We will get to choose the meaning of the events in our lives. Now, this is one of the most powerful concepts we have access to as human beings. And, everything would be very different, I'm sure, if we all knew this from a really young age, right? Of events happen, life happens, there's accidents, there's things that we would really struggle to explain as to why and how and what's the meaning of it, right? We get to choose the meaning. Again, I talk about this in that the bonus episode 1. I'll put the link in the description. Of I became very, very aware after the whole incident with my dog that I needed to choose a meaning that enabled me to integrate the experience, learn the lessons, but move on. And so before my inner child got to, create something that wasn't true, or the inner critic was in there also trying to create something that wasn't true. I had to decide the meaning. And so after quite a few hours afterwards, I was able to look back over the event, talk it through, take some of the lessons, know what I would do differently in the future, and choose the meaning from it, which for me was, wow, how unbelievably well looked after was me and Bailey, my dog, on that day, that we both walked away totally and utterly unharmed. Like, what a miracle. That's amazing. How looked after am I? So be very, very conscious of the meaning that you assign different events in your life. And we get to choose we get to change the meaning as well. That's one of the concepts of timeline therapy in NLP. So in neuro-linguistic programming, is that we can't physically go back and change the event, but we can go back, see that event from a different perspective, and take a different lesson and a different learning from it. So when it feels like everything's going to shit in your life, when it feels like you're not getting a break, take a step back, or imagine you're taking a bird's eye view and you're looking over your entire life at the moment, and you're looking down on it. What meaning do you want to take from it that is going to enable you to move forward with lessons and positive learnings that are going to help you? One of the things I also want to add into this is the time of the greatest change or the greatest shift or breakthrough. The time right before that feels like everything's falling apart. And I've gone through this cycle so many times now that it doesn't make it any nicer to be going through it, as everything that you currently know, it falls away or changes or whatever's going on with it. But it does make me know that I can rest in the knowledge that it means I'm on the verge of a breakthrough, the next level shift, the next stage of evolution, if you like. And it's at times like this that I often think about the caterpillar going into its chrysalis, emerging into the butterfly. And one of the things that I'm never going to know about the universe, but is always a question I have in my own mind, is, does the caterpillar know what's happening to it? Does it know that when it goes into that chrysalis and everything it knows is breaking down, and it's all, what a huge change and transformation it goes through? Does it know that this is part of its evolution? Or does it believe that this is it, like death is coming to it, right? And I think very oftentimes our own life feels like that. There are times when it feels like everything's going wrong, or that it's not coming together in the way that we want, or all of the old is breaking away, because it needs to be transformed, because the new is on its way. So that's also something that I invite you to consider, is that if you have been on this journey for a while, if you have been delving into some of your inner world and awakening up to who you truly are, you're wanting that life of more authenticity and freedom and connection, and you're actively flooding your system with things that inspire you for that, it makes sense that there may very well be a point in your life where what no longer serves you, with what no longer is aligned for you, is going to break away. And that's going to feel, to your very human self, like it's going to be really unnerving. And so during this time, it's more important than ever to stay connected to your higher self, to your intuition, to that part of you that sees the bigger picture, that holds that bird's eye perspective, that can see the greater purpose in all of this. Stay connected to that part of you, because that will be the one that guides you through, because your human self will freak out, as is the case with any change. And it's at times like this when you really want to be paying attention to that inner world and seeing, is there a particular action that or part of you that wants to be alchemized, right? Maybe there's a habit or something that needs to transform within yourself. And this has happened so much in my own life, where there'll be a particular unhelpful habit or pattern that I've got, and I think the universe is really good at gently knocking on the door sometimes, of going, okay, come on, like let's change this up now. This is not serving you, this is what we're aiming for. And it'll be like, oh, okay, but it's not really a good time right now. Or our human self can come up with a million different excuses, right? So then it's like, a louder knock comes, and it's like, okay, I hear you, but next month is going to be the time. And then I think the universe comes with a bulldozer sometimes and goes, okay, now you're going to listen. And so, like, be very diligent at listening to your own internal world, and being honest with the evaluation of what's going on as well. Is everything going to shit a reflection of something that needs to change and shift in your own internal world, right? If you could sit down with yourself and have an honest conversation with your different parts of you, you imagine that you're all around the campfire and you're able to have a conversation with all the parts of you. Is there something you're resisting or avoiding? Is there some way that you can be helped to navigate this a little bit better? So I also think that's part of this process as well, of what, we're not always going to know the lessons or the meaning in something until we've gone through it and we've got that different perspective. We're on the other side of it, but we absolutely can keep connected to the different parts of ourselves and have honest conversations about parts that we might be avoiding, or let's face it, there's some parts of us that we don't necessarily want to change or give up or transform because they're comfortable and known and safe. And so that what's required of us to shift into that next evolution is, we might be avoiding and resisting it, but if we were to step into it, would it make all of this a little bit better? So hopefully that's given you some good pointers of how to navigate this time, and also understanding that this is life. I think one of the probably the most destructive parts that came from the positive psychology movement was that we can somehow always access this happy, positive mindset even when we're going through some really, really challenging times. And we're human, right? This is the wholehearted life, where we are embracing all of the spectrum of emotions. And I think there's ways that we can navigate this that makes it slightly easier, but it's totally okay to feel like you're being sideswiped by life sometimes, where you're struggling on certain days to, like your human self is struggling to deal with the sheer amount of change or the sheer amount of shit that's flying around at the moment. Like, it's okay to feel the pain or the struggle or the suffering of that, and yet still be connected to that higher self, to the knowing that there is a greater purpose in all of this, or that eventually it's gonna turn around and you're on the brink of the next breakthrough, right? You can know all of that and it still be tough in the middle of it. So I also wanted to leave you with, it's okay if you're in that tough time right now. It's okay if you're in the struggle, you're in the battleground. I'll leave the link to the podcast episode where I talk about, how to deal with that gap between where you are now and where you want to be. It feels like a battleground, and don't underestimate how much that can take from your physical self, the mental, physical, emotional energy that it can take to get through the day sometimes. So I'll link as well to the episode where it talks about your inner nurturer, because this is where you really want to up the self-care when you're in the middle of it, and that's totally okay. No one's asking for perfection here. That's not what this is about. It's okay to struggle when you're in the middle of the battleground, and know that it's not going to last forever. And hopefully in this episode it's given you a few pointers as to things that you can look at that will help you to navigate this time. But also it's part of being human and it's part of the journey. And I have a huge, huge respect and admiration for anyone who walks through the battleground, because it's hard and it's tough when you're in it, but it's the transformation, right? It's what it is to walk through life as an engaged, awakened human being. And that's harder to do than it is to avoid it or numb out, or, one of the many other ways that we've created now that will try and separate you and disconnect you from this experience. So well done if you're in it. It's not on you, it's life. Check in with yourself, have a meeting with all the different parts of you, see if there's any guidance that they're giving you. Approach it with radical honesty. The more honest you can be with those different parts of yourself, the quicker and easier the transition through this time will be. And know that you're not alone. There's a lot of people who are battling hard at the moment, and you are certainly not on your own. And if you are more than welcome to reach out to me at any time. And I'm also starting to build up a community of all of as like-minded souls. And if you'd like to know more about that, please do drop me a message. All right, until next time, bye for now.